the unexpected heir of all galaxy's most feared alien species, the Zealander, had never encountered a civilization like Earth's. To them, humanity was nothing but an insignificant, primitive race, barely scraping by in a small corner of the galaxy. They had conquered countless worlds, annihilated entire species, and left destruction in their wake. The Zealander were known for their advanced technology, their superior intelligence, and their ruthless thirst for dominance. No one in the galaxy dared to challenge them. But Earth was different. The Zealander fleet appeared in Earth's orbit with little warning. Their ships were massive, dark monoliths that blocked out the stars as they descended toward the planet. The aliens were confident in their victory before they had even made contact. They had no reason to believe that humanity could mount any sort of resistance. The human military was nothing compared to the Zealander's advanced forces. Their weapons were old, their technology outdated. Yet, as the Zealander looked down upon Earth's surface, they could not have known that they were about to face something far more dangerous than anything they had ever encountered. On Earth, the situation was far from ideal. Nations scrambled to prepare for what was undoubtedly the end of civilization. Their intelligence had confirmed the Zealander's arrival. Panic spread across the globe. The United Nations called an emergency session, but there was little to offer. The Zealander were powerful beyond belief. The human forces gathered to defend their planet were outgunned and outnumbered. The world was on the brink of collapse, but one man stood firm in the face of certain defeat. Captain John Matthews, commander of Earth's most elite military unit, was not one to yield in the face of overwhelming odds. He had seen the reports, heard the warnings, and knew the devastating capabilities of the Zealander. Yet, he refused to believe that humanity was done for. He had fought in wars before, faced down impossible challenges, and come out victorious. This would be no different. He stood at the front of the human defense effort, a figure of calm determination in the chaos. His team was made up of the best soldiers Earth had to offer, but even they could sense the hopelessness of the situation. "We've faced overwhelming odds before," Matthews said to his officers as they gathered in the war room, "and we're still here. We're not going down without a fight. If they think we're weak, they've underestimated us." Matthews had always believed that the true strength of humanity lay not in their weapons or technology but in their ability to adapt. Humans were survivors, able to endure and thrive in even the harshest conditions. They had evolved over millennia to overcome every challenge the planet had thrown at them. The Zealander, for all their advanced technology, did not understand this. They did not understand that humanity's greatest weapon was its ability to fight against the odds. As the Zealander began their descent toward Earth, their leaders were already making plans to invade. They would destroy the planet's defenses and subjugate the humans. It was a routine operation for them, another world to conquer, another victory to add to their long list of triumphs. But the Zealander commander, Crather, had one major flaw that would ultimately lead to his downfall: arrogance. He had heard of humanity's wars, their history of conflict, but to him, it was nothing more than primitive savagery. It did not impress him. Crather's fleet was overwhelming. The Zealander ships moved with precision, cutting through Earth's atmosphere as if they owned it. The humans had no way to stop them. The world watched in horror as the alien fleet hovered above, their cities, their weapons primed and ready to strike. Crather gave the order to begin the attack, and the first shots rang out across the sky. The cities of Earth fell within hours. The Zealander unleashed devastating bombardments, leveling skyscrapers and reducing entire regions to rubble. The human forces, ill-equipped and overwhelmed, were no match for the advanced weaponry of the Zealander. Yet, despite the destruction, the humans did not break. They fought back with every ounce of their strength, refusing to surrender. Even as their cities burned, Captain Matthews was one of the few who kept his calm. As the situation deteriorated, he moved swiftly to organize his forces. He knew that humanity's only chance was to hit the Zealander where they least expected it. The Zealander believed that humans were nothing more than an annoyance, unworthy of their attention. They had no idea what they were about to face. Matthews and his team were preparing a counterattack, but it would require cunning and resourcefulness. The Zealander might have superior firepower, but the humans had something far more dangerous: the will to survive. Meanwhile, Crather, high above Earth, surveyed the destruction with satisfaction. His fleet had already taken control of key military bases, and he believed that victory was all but assured. Yet, deep within him, there was a nagging sense of doubt. He had underestimated the human resolve. As the battle raged on below, Crather was forced to acknowledge that this was no ordinary species. But he pushed the thought aside. Humans were weak, and the Zealander were invincible. Back on Earth, Matthews made a bold decision. He knew that the human forces needed to be united under one banner if they were to stand a chance. He called for a global military alliance, bringing together the best fighters from every nation to form a unified front against the Zealander invaders. It was a risky move, but Matthews had faith in humanity's ability to rise to the occasion. He was certain that the Zealander had underestimated the one thing they could never calculate: the human spirit. The first wave of the human counteroffensive began as Matthews and his team took to the battlefield. The Zealander were caught off guard. They had expected easy victories, but they found themselves facing a fight unlike any they had ever experienced. The humans were relentless. They fought with everything they had, using their wits, their strength, and their will to survive. And in that moment, the Zealander began to realize the truth. They had misjudged humanity. The battle for Earth had just begun. The first strike as the first wave of the Zealander invasion swept across Earth's cities. The damage was devastating. Entire cities crumbled beneath the weight of alien weapons. Skyscrapers fell like dominoes, their steel frames twisting and collapsing under the force of alien artillery. The ground shook with each explosion, and the skies darkened with the smoke of burning ruins. It was a nightmare, a war like no other. The Zealander had come to Earth expecting an easy victory, but what they didn't account for was humanity's resilience. Captain John Matthews watched the devastation unfold from the command center, his heart heavy with the weight of the responsibility on his shoulders. The destruction of Earth's cities was a painful sight, but Matthews wasn't one to dwell on despair. He knew that hope was a fleeting thing in war, but the human will to fight was a constant. Earth was losing ground, but humanity had not yet been defeated. The Zealander might have had superior technology, but they lacked one crucial element that humanity possessed: determination. General Matthews, the alien forces are advancing faster than we anticipated. A voice crackled through the comms. It was Lieutenant Emily Harper, one of Matthews' trusted officers. Our defenses are being overwhelmed. Matthews clenched his jaw, his eyes narrowing as he surveyed the tactical map. The Zealander were making their way through Earth's defenses with ruthless precision, leaving a path of destruction in their wake. But Matthews didn't panic. He had seen worse, faced impossible odds before. This was just another challenge, and humanity had always risen to meet challenges. Lieutenant, prepare the counteroffensive, Matthews ordered. We may not have the firepower to match them, but we have the will to survive. Get the rest of the forces ready. We're not backing down despite the overwhelming power of the Zealander. Matthews knew that a single, well-executed strike could turn the tide. The Zealander were used to fighting weaker species, to having their way without resistance. They didn't understand humanity's capacity for ingenuity and adaptability. The aliens might have advanced technology, but humanity had something far more dangerous: unpredictability. Meanwhile, Crather, the Zealander commander, sat in his command ship high above Earth, watching the destruction unfold on his screens. He felt a sense of satisfaction as he watched the alien forces crush the human resistance. To him, Earth was just another weak species, soon to be crushed under the might of the Zealander. The humans had put up a fight, but it was a futile one. They were no match for the Zealander's weapons of war. Their cities were burning, their armies scattered, and their leaders on the brink of surrender. What's the status of the human forces? Crather asked, his voice cold and calculating. They're resisting, Commander, one of his officers replied, but their efforts are disorganized. Our weapons are far superior. It won't be long before their military is completely crushed. Crather nodded, dismissing the report with a wave of his hand. Crush them completely. Leave no survivors. As the Zealander forces continued their assault, Matthews and his team moved quickly. He knew that the key to survival was not in fighting the aliens head-on, but in using their arrogance against them. The Zealander had underestimated humanity, and Matthews planned to make them regret it. The first part of the human counteroffensive was simple: guerrilla warfare. The Zealander might have overwhelming firepower, but they lacked the adaptability and ingenuity that humans excelled at. Matthews knew the alien forces would never expect humans to fight in ways that didn't rely on advanced technology. Instead, Earth's forces relied on their surroundings, setting traps, using the terrain, and striking when least expected. The Zealander had assumed that their technology would be enough to wipe out humanity, but they didn't realize that the humans they were fighting were not easily intimidated. Matthews and his team led the charge, moving through the ruins of cities, coordinating strikes with precision and speed. They knew that every moment counted, and they were determined to make the most of it. They attacked Zealander supply lines, ambushed alien patrols, and sabotaged their equipment. It wasn't much, but it was enough to send a message. Humanity would not go down without a fight. Back on Earth's surface, the human resistance began to gain momentum. Despite the overwhelming odds, they were managing to slow the Zealander advance. The alien forces were used to their tactics being met with immediate submission. But the humans were different. They fought back with a determination that the Zealander had never encountered before. For every city the aliens destroyed, there was a human force willing to fight back, to reclaim what had been taken. As the battle raged on, Matthews was faced with a difficult decision. Earth's military had limited resources, and the Zealander forces were relentless. There was no guarantee that humanity could hold out forever. But Matthews had a plan, a bold and risky plan that could turn the tide in their favor. The Zealander had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt, and Matthews was about to use that to his advantage. "Lieutenant Harper, prepare the next phase of the counteroffensive," Matthews ordered, his voice steady. "We're going to take the fight to them. We can't keep playing defense. It's time to show the Zealander what humanity is capable of." The plan was simple but dangerous. Matthews and his team would infiltrate the Zealander command ship, located deep in Earth's orbit, and disable their communication systems. Without their command structure, the Zealander would be forced to fight without coordination, allowing humanity to strike back with precision. As Matthews and his team made their way toward the enemy's command ship, the stakes couldn't have been higher. The mission was a suicide run, but it was humanity's best chance at turning the tide of the war. They would infiltrate the Zealander stronghold, strike fast, and disable their communications. If they succeeded, it would cripple the alien invasion, but if they failed, Earth would fall. The final assault was about to begin. The Zealander thought they had won, but humanity had just begun to fight. The unseen power as the battle raged on. The Zealander had no idea that they were about to face a force they couldn't begin to comprehend. The mission Matthews and his team had embarked on was their only chance to turn the tide. The humans had been underestimated from the beginning, their resilience written off as desperation, their courage seen as foolishness. But what the Zealander didn't realize was that humanity's greatest strength didn't lie in their technology or their tactics. It was in their spirit and in their ability to adapt. When faced with insurmountable odds, Captain Matthews' plan was simple yet audacious. He and his elite team would infiltrate the heart of the Zealander fleet, strike deep within their command ship, and disable their communications network. With the alien command structure in chaos, their military might would be fragmented, making it far easier for humanity to take the fight to them. The mission was dangerous, a suicide run as Matthews called it, but it was their best chance to defeat an enemy that had already inflicted catastrophic damage on Earth. The team made their way to the Zealander command ship, their movements swift and silent as they navigated through the wreckage of the cities. Matthews' mind raced as they approached their target. The alien ship loomed ahead, a dark monolith in space that seemed to block out the stars. Its massive hull was covered in intricate alien symbols, and its surface shimmered with an otherworldly glow. The Zealander, with their advanced technology and superior firepower, had no reason to believe that a small group of human soldiers would dare to challenge them on their own ship. But Matthews knew something the aliens didn't. Humanity had an uncanny ability to overcome. When everything seemed lost, the team reached the airlock of the Zealander ship, a massive metal door that stood as the final barrier between them and their target. Matthews glanced over at his team, each member of the elite squad locked in their mission. There was no turning back now. They all knew that once they entered, there would be no guarantee they'd make it out alive. But for the first time since the war had begun, Matthews could see something else in his team's eyes: hope. It was a fleeting thing, a fragile glimmer in the darkness, but it was there. Humanity's will to fight was something no alien force could ever truly understand. The airlock hissed open, and Matthews and his team boarded the Zealander command ship. As they stepped inside, they were immediately met with an alien world, a place far beyond anything Earth had ever seen. The interior of the ship was vast, an endless expanse of metallic corridors and dim, pulsating lights. The ship itself seemed alive, a reflection of the alien species that had constructed it. But there was no time to marvel at the surroundings. Matthews and his team moved swiftly, their mission clear: disable the communication array and sow chaos among the Zealander forces. The further they ventured into the heart of the ship, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The Zealander seemed to be everywhere, their alien forms moving in sync with the ship's eerie hum. It was clear that the aliens had no concept of the risks the humans were willing to take. As the team navigated the maze-like corridors, Matthews couldn't help but think of how far humanity had come. The Zealander had assumed the humans were weak, a species to be wiped out without a second thought. But humanity had survived countless trials, had overcome unimaginable obstacles. They were survivors, not because of their weapons or technology, but because they never gave up. Just as the team reached the communication hub, disaster struck. An alarm blared through the ship, the sound reverberating through the walls. The Zealander had detected them. Matthew's heart pounded in his chest as his team scrambled to carry out their mission. The communication hub was just ahead, but they had no way of knowing how much time they had before the entire ship was alerted to their presence. They moved faster, their footsteps echoing in the tense silence. This was it. They had come this far, and there was no turning back. The door to the communication room slid open with a hiss, and Matthews and his team rushed inside. The room was filled with alien technology, intricate consoles that hummed with power. The Zealander's communication network was their lifeblood, and Matthews knew that once it was disabled, chaos would follow. The team set to work immediately, working as one, disabling the alien systems. As Matthews typed in the sequence of commands to overload the network, his mind was sharp. Every thought focused on the task at hand. The room was tense, each second passing like an eternity. Suddenly, the first explosion shook the ship. It was followed by another and another. The ship was starting to come alive. The Zealander realizing their presence too late. The team's mission was clear, but Matthews knew that if they didn't leave soon, they would be trapped in the heart of the alien fleet. He had prepared for this moment, but even so, he couldn't shake the feeling of dread that clawed at his chest. They were in enemy territory now, and time was running out. They needed to finish the job and get out before the Zealander arrived. In full force. As the final command was given, the communication network overloaded, sending a surge of power throughout the ship. The lights flickered, and the entire command structure seemed to shudder. The Zealander had been dealt a devastating blow, and the mission was a success. But Matthews knew that this was only the beginning. The Zealander would retaliate, and they would come for Earth with a vengeance. They were not going to be easily stopped, however. One thing had been made clear to the aliens. Humanity was not to be underestimated. As Matthews and his team made their way back to their extraction point, they were met with a sight that would forever change the course of the war. The Zealander forces, once confident in their superiority, were now in disarray. The communication network was down, and their coordinated attacks were falling apart. Chaos spread throughout the fleet as the aliens tried to regroup. Their arrogance shattered. The team made it to the extraction point, but Matthews couldn't help but feel that the real battle was just beginning. Humanity had struck a blow to the Zealander, but there was still much more to do. The war was far from over, and Earth's fight for survival was only beginning. The Zealander had made one fatal mistake. They had underestimated humanity's ability to survive, to adapt, and to rise from the ashes when all seemed lost. They had awakened something in humanity that the galaxy would soon regret. The fight was far from over. A shift in the battle. The Zealander had never experienced anything like this before. They had conquered countless worlds, wiped out species that had once thought themselves indestructible, and left nothing but death in their wake. But Earth had shown them something they never anticipated. In the midst of their technological superiority and overwhelming firepower, they had failed to account for the one thing that made humanity more dangerous than they could ever imagine: the unyielding spirit of survival. The chaos Matthews and his team had caused in the heart of the Zealander fleet had sent shockwaves through their command structure. Without their communication network functioning, the Zealander forces were disoriented, unable to coordinate their attacks as efficiently as before. For the first time since the invasion began, the aliens found themselves on the defensive. Their overconfidence had become their greatest weakness. They had underestimated the humans, and now they were paying the price. The war was no longer just a battle of technology or tactics. It had become a war of wills, and humanity was determined to show the galaxy that it was not to be taken lightly. Captain Matthews watched as his forces regrouped and prepared for the next phase of the counteroffensive. The Zealander might have superior weaponry, but the human military had one thing they could never replicate: the ability to adapt in the heat of battle. The first human counterattack after the successful disruption of the Zealander fleet had been nothing short of miraculous. With their communication systems shattered, the Zealander were forced to rely on outdated protocols and incomplete information. This allowed the human forces to strike with precision, targeting weak points in the alien ships and taking out key systems that had previously been impenetrable. The tide of the war had shifted, and the Zealander were no longer the unstoppable force they once were. For the first time, the Zealander began to feel the sting of fear. They had always been confident in their ability to crush weaker species underfoot. They had done it countless times before, but the humans were different. They fought back with a savagery and tenacity that the Zealander had never encountered. The more the aliens tried to regain control, the more they realized that Earth's military was not going to fall in line. Like the others they had conquered, Crather, the Zealander commander, had always believed that the conquest of Earth would be an easy task. His arrogance had blinded him to the true nature of humanity. Now, as he watched his fleet crumble under the unexpected resistance, doubt began to creep into his mind. He could no longer dismiss the humans as primitive. They were something else entirely. The way they fought with desperation yet calculated precision was something the Zealander could not ignore. "Commander, we are losing ground," one of his officers reported, his voice laced with anxiety. "The human forces have adapted far faster than we anticipated. Our ships are taking heavy damage, and their counterattacks are becoming more coordinated." Crather stood silent for a moment, his hands gripping the edge of the command chair as he stared at the holomap of the battlefield. His fleet, once a symbol of invincibility, was now struggling to maintain control of the war. The humans had proven themselves to be far more resourceful than he had given them credit for. "This cannot continue," Crather muttered. "We must crush them. Send the second wave of reinforcements. Order them to target human command centers. We will break their resolve." The decision was made, and the Zealander forces regrouped, preparing for their next assault. But Matthews and his forces were ready. The human military had already adjusted their strategies to account for the Zealander's renewed attack. They had seen the weakness in the alien fleet's structure and had devised a new plan to exploit it. Human engineers worked tirelessly, reworking their weapons and defenses to match the changing tide of battle. Earth's fighters, once outclassed by the Zealander's superior technology, now adapted to use guerrilla tactics and hit-and-run maneuvers. They struck hard and fast, targeting alien ships' weak points and retreating before the Zealander could respond. The Zealander commander, Crather, could feel the walls closing in. His forces were stretched thin, and their once unified strategy was beginning to fall apart. The human will to fight was becoming their greatest weapon. Back on Earth, the people had begun to see the first glimmer of hope. For weeks, they had been beaten, pushed to the brink of extinction, and yet now they were seeing signs of victory. News reports began to spread across the globe of human forces successfully repelling Zealander attacks, taking back territories that had once seemed lost forever. The human spirit, often underestimated, was rising, and with it, the realization that Earth had become a true force to be reckoned with. Matthews stood at the front lines with his team, leading by example. He knew that Earth's military might never be able to match the Zealander ship for ship, but they could outlast them. They could wear them down with constant, unpredictable attacks that left the Zealander unable to regroup. Every victory, no matter how small, sent a powerful message to both sides. Humanity would not be crushed. They would fight to the last. The turning point came when the human forces managed to infiltrate another alien stronghold. A small group of special operatives, led by Lieutenant Harper, infiltrated the heart of the Zealander's weapons manufacturing facility. They destroyed critical resources and sabotaged the aliens' ability to produce their advanced weapons. The sabotage was a resounding success, and the Zealander found themselves unable to replace their lost equipment as quickly as they had hoped. It was a blow to their pride, a reminder that they were not as invincible as they had believed. Crather, now fully aware that the war was slipping away from him, could not ignore the desperation in his fleet. The alien forces began to retreat, and for the first time, the humans were pushing them back. Matthew saw the opening he had been waiting for. He knew that the next step was to push forward, not just defend, but take the fight to the Zealander's homeworld. "We've shown them that we can fight," Matthews said to his officers, his voice steady and filled with determination. "Now, it's time to take the fight to them. If we hit them on their own turf, we might finally break their resolve." The decision was made. Matthews and his team began preparing for the final push, to strike at the heart of the Zealander Empire. The battle for Earth had only just begun. But humanity had already shown the galaxy that they were not a species to be taken lightly. The Zealander might have underestimated humanity at first, but now they knew the truth. Humanity was the galaxy's most terrifying warrior species, and they were not going down without a fight. Unstoppable for said Zealander fleet had always prided itself on being an unstoppable force. It was a fleet that had torn through galaxies, annihilating any species that dared to challenge them. The galaxy's most feared conquerors had seen countless civilizations crumble beneath their might, and they had always walked away victorious. But as the war with Earth raged on, something unexpected began to unfold. The humans, who the Zealander had once dismissed as insignificant, were proving to be the most formidable adversaries they had ever encountered. Humanity was relentless, and for the first time in his career, Crather, the Zealander commander, felt the sting of doubt. He had underestimated the human race, and it was beginning to cost him dearly. The battle had shifted. No longer were the Zealanders striking with the crushing force they had been accustomed to. The humans had adapted, countering every attack with unexpected strategies that threw the Zealander off balance. Captain Matthews had led humanity's resistance with a tactical brilliance that the aliens could not predict. The humans had learned how to fight not just with force, but with strategy, with surprise, and with a will to survive that was unlike anything the Zealander had ever encountered. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their weapons or technology, but their ability to think on their feet, to outsmart their enemies, and to fight for their very survival. As the Zealander continued their assault on Earth, they found themselves constantly reacting to the humans' moves, scrambling to regain control of a war that had quickly spiraled out of their grasp. For the first time, the Zealander were playing catch-up. Captain Matthews watched as the human forces began to push the Zealander back. It wasn't easy, and there were still many battles to fight, but the momentum had shifted. The once feared alien fleet, which had descended upon Earth with the expectation of crushing humanity, was now on the defensive. The humans had discovered the Zealander's weakness, their reliance on superior firepower without the ability to adapt. When things went wrong, the Zealander had expected humanity to break beneath their might, but instead, the humans had risen from the ashes, stronger than before. Matthews stood in the command center, watching the progress of the human forces as they advanced on the alien strongholds. The battle had become a game of cat and mouse, with the Zealander trying desperately to regroup and the humans exploiting every weakness. The alien fleet was beginning to fracture. Some of their ships had been destroyed, others severely damaged, and the once unified force was now in disarray. The Zealander had never faced a species like this before, and it was clear to Matthews that they were about to face a reckoning. "Lieutenant Harper," Matthews said, his voice calm but filled with purpose, "prepare the next phase of the assault. We're going to take the fight to their homeworld." The decision had been made. It was time for humanity to go on the offensive. Matthews knew that the Zealander would not be satisfied until Earth was completely crushed. But humanity's resolve had never been stronger. The time had come to strike at the heart of the Zealander Empire, to show them that the humans they had once dismissed as weak were now their greatest threat. Matthews understood the risks. The Zealander would not take this lightly, and they would retaliate with everything they had. But humanity had reached a point where they had nothing left to lose. This was their last stand, and they were prepared to give it everything they had. As the human forces prepared for the final assault, Matthews addressed his troops. His words were simple, but filled with the kind of conviction that only someone who had witnessed humanity's greatest struggles could express. "We have fought for our survival," Matthews said, his voice strong and steady. "We have fought for our home, for our families, and for everything that makes us human. The Zealander thought we were weak. They thought we would crumble beneath their might. But we are still here, and now it's time to take the fight to them. We will show them that humanity is not to be underestimated. We will make them regret ever thinking they could conquer us." The troops cheered, their spirits lifted by Matthews' words. The time for fear was over. The Zealander might have had the firepower, but the humans had the will to survive. They had the heart of warriors who had faced death time and time again, and had always come back stronger. The human forces were ready, and they were about to deliver a blow to the Zealander that they would never forget. The fleet was mobilized, and the human forces moved out, their ships cutting through space with purpose and determination. They were no longer running from the Zealander, they were chasing them, hunting them down like predators. Every human ship was a testament to the strength of humanity's will. The Zealander might have thought they were the most advanced species in the galaxy, But they had failed to account for the one thing that made humanity truly terrifying: their unbreakable resolve. As the human forces neared the Zealander homeworld, the final battle began to take shape. The Zealander had fortified their defenses, but they were no match for the ingenuity and resourcefulness of the human military. Matthews and his team had developed new tactics, new weapons, and new strategies to ensure that humanity would win. This final fight, they would strike quickly, hit hard, and leave the Zealander reeling. The human fleet descended upon the Zealander homeworld with the fury of a species that had been pushed to the edge. The battle was intense, with explosions lighting up the dark expanse of space. Zealander ships were falling one by one, their once mighty fleet crumbling under the relentless onslaught of humanity's forces. It was a sight that no one in the galaxy had ever expected to see. The Zealander, who had once believed themselves invincible, were now fighting for their very survival. In the heat of the battle, Matthews led the charge, his ship cutting through the Zealander defenses with precision and skill. The final assault was on, and humanity was pushing forward with every ounce of strength they had. This was the moment they had all been waiting for, the moment when humanity would prove to the galaxy that they were not just survivors but warriors. And when the dust settled, the Zealander would know the truth. Humanity was the galaxy's most terrifying warrior species. As the Zealander homeworld burned in the distance, Matthews stood tall, knowing that this fight had just changed everything. The humans had faced the impossible and had emerged victorious. The Zealander would never forget what they had seen today. Humanity had risen up against all odds, and the galaxy would never be the same. The final showdown, final battle had begun. As the human fleet closed in on the Zealander homeworld, the atmosphere in the command center was thick with anticipation. The galaxy's most powerful conquerors were now reeling from the blows they had suffered, their once unified fleet now scattered and disorganized. It was a sight Matthews had dreamed of, but the reality was far more intense than he had ever imagined. Earth was on the verge of a final victory, but the cost of that victory had been steep. Thousands of lives had already been lost, and the Zealander, though fractured, were not ready to surrender. This was a fight that would decide the fate of the entire galaxy. Captain Matthews stood at the front of his ship's command center, staring out at the vast expanse of space. His face was hard, determined, but inside, there was a lingering weight. He had led humanity through countless battles, each more dangerous than the last. But this was different. This wasn't just a battle for Earth, it was a battle for the very survival of the human race. The Zealander had underestimated them from the start, believing that they could wipe out humanity with ease. Now, humanity was on the brink of achieving the impossible. They had survived, they had fought back, and they were going to win. "We have them where we want them," Matthews said, his voice steady. "But don't let up. We need to finish this." Lieutenant Harper, standing beside him, nodded. "Our forces are in position. The Zealander are struggling to regroup, but they're still dangerous. They're not going down without a fight." Matthews' eyes never left the view outside the ship. The Zealander homeworld was now clearly visible, its surface glowing with the intensity of the battle raging above it. Alien ships darted across the sky, launching desperate counterattacks in a last-ditch effort to maintain control. But it was clear to Matthews that the end was near. The human forces had inflicted too much damage. The Zealander, once invincible, were now teetering on the edge of defeat. "Prepare for the final push," Matthews ordered. "We hit them where it hurts the most. If we can take out their main command station, we can end this." Harper turned to the communications officer and relayed the orders. The human fleet began its final approach, weaving through the remains of the Zealander defenses. The battle had been long and brutal, but it was not yet over. As the human forces advanced, they encountered pockets of resistance, alien ships that fought tooth and nail to hold their ground. But the humans were determined, and with each passing moment, they drew closer to their objective. The Zealander, despite their overwhelming numbers and advanced technology, had never encountered an enemy like this. The humans didn't fight like the other species they had conquered. They fought with a ferocity and ingenuity that the Zealander could not comprehend. Their tactics were unpredictable, and their willingness to sacrifice everything for the survival of their species was something the Zealander could not match. The battle had turned into a war of attrition, and the Zealander were losing. Meanwhile, Crather, the Zealander commander, was beginning to feel the pressure. His once unbreakable resolve was starting to falter. He had witnessed the destruction of his fleet, the collapse of his empire, and the relentless push of humanity. He had expected to be hailed as a hero for conquering Earth, but instead, he was facing humiliation. The humans were not the weak. primitive species he had thought them to be. They had fought back with everything they had, and now they were on the verge of winning. Crather paced the command center of his flagship, his mind racing. He had lost so much, his forces were decimated, his fleet scattered, and now the humans were closing in on his homeworld. He could feel the weight of defeat pressing down on him. He had led the charge, and now he was watching his legacy crumble. There was no way to stop it now. The humans had won, but Crather was not ready to give up, not yet. He would not let the humans destroy everything he had worked for. With a final, desperate measure, Crather activated the self-destruct sequence for his flagship, planning to take down as many human ships as possible in a final act of defiance. As the countdown began, Matthews received the transmission. "They're going to destroy their flagship," Harper said, her voice tight with urgency. "They're trying to take us down with them." "Not on my watch," Matthews replied, his voice hard as steel. "We need to get out of here now." The human fleet immediately pulled back, retreating just in time to avoid the catastrophic explosion that rocked the Zealander flagship. The shockwave was massive, sending shockwaves through space and shaking the very foundations of the alien fleet. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. The Zealander flagship was gone, obliterated in a final, desperate act. The humans had survived, but the battle was far from over. As the explosion cleared, Matthews issued new orders. "We regroup and press forward. The Zealander may be trying to play their final card, but they've shown us their true weakness. They're vulnerable. We end this now." The human fleet surged forward, their ships now filled with renewed purpose. The remaining Zealander ships, disoriented and disheartened by the loss of their flagship, tried to regroup, but it was too late. The humans had taken the initiative, and they were now in control. Matthews and his team led the charge, navigating through the remnants of the alien defenses to reach the heart of the Zealander homeworld. As the human forces made their final approach to the Zealander capital, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Every ship, every soldier, knew that this was the moment that would determine the fate of Earth. Matthews could feel the weight of history on his shoulders. If they succeeded, humanity would have proven itself to be the most terrifying warrior species the galaxy had ever seen. But if they failed, all would be lost. The final battle took place over the surface of the Zealander homeworld, a massive, sprawling metropolis filled with alien architecture. Unlike anything humanity had ever seen, the Zealander had built their civilization on a foundation of conquest. But now that foundation was crumbling, the human forces fought tooth and nail, pushing deeper into the heart of the Zealander capital, their every action motivated by the need to survive. Matthews watched as the human fleet launched its final wave of attacks, each strike sending a ripple of destruction through the alien defenses. The Zealander fought back fiercely, but their heart was no longer in the fight. They had been broken by humanity's relentless assault, and now they were on the verge of total defeat. In the end, it was humanity's will to survive that triumphed. The Zealander homeworld fell. The battle was over. Earth had won. Captain Matthews stood at the helm of his ship, watching as the last remnants of the Zealander forces retreated into the depths of space. The war had been long, brutal, and devastating, but humanity had emerged victorious. The galaxy would never forget the day when the Zealander learned that humanity was the most terrifying warrior species they had ever faced. And as the human fleet returned to Earth, Matthews couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Earth had not just survived, they had shown the galaxy that when humanity fights, it fights to win. Victory in the galactic awakening war was over, and the Zealander Empire had fallen. Earth had stood defiant against all odds and claimed victory. The Zealander, once the galaxy's most feared conquerors, had met their match in the human race. As the remnants of the alien fleet retreated into the darkness of space, there was a moment of silence, a brief, almost surreal pause in the chaos, where Earth's people could finally take a breath. The galaxy would never be the same again. Humanity had proven to the universe that they were not a species to be underestimated, and the echoes of their victory would resonate for generations to come. Captain Matthews stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring out at the vast expanse of space. The battle had been fierce, the losses heavy, but the mission had been accomplished. Earth had been saved, and the threat of the Zealander was no more. The victory was bittersweet. The cost of the war had been high, and many brave souls had been lost along the way. The human spirit had been tested like never before, and it had held firm. He took a moment to reflect on how far they had come. Earth had been on the brink of annihilation when the Zealander had arrived, but now they had emerged victorious, not through advanced technology or overwhelming numbers, but through something far more powerful, their will to survive, humanity had shown the galaxy that they were not just another species to be conquered, but a force to be reckoned with. They had fought for their home, for their families, and for their future, and in the end, that had made all the difference. Captain Matthews, Lieutenant Harper's voice broke through his thoughts. We've received a transmission from the Galactic Council. Matthews turned to face his officer. The Galactic Council, a coalition of the most powerful species in the galaxy, had been watching the war unfold from a distance. They had seen the Zealanor's conquest of countless worlds, and they had seen humanity's unexpected resistance. Now, with the war over, it seemed that the time had come for the galaxy to acknowledge the role humanity had played in shaping its future. Matthews nodded, a sense of anticipation building within him. Put it through, he said. The holographic screen flickered to life, and a figure appeared before him. It was a representative of the Galactic Council, a being of light and energy that flickered with a faint aura of power. Matthews had seen such beings before, but this time, the mood was different. There was no arrogance, no condescension in the way the representative regarded him. This time, there was respect. Captain Matthews, the representative began, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I extend our congratulations to you and to all of humanity. Your victory over the Zealaner is unprecedented. We have watched your struggle with great interest, and we have come to a decision. Matthews straightened, unsure of what the council would say next. What decision? He asked. You have earned the right to be recognized as a member of the Galactic Council, the representative said. Humanity's victory over the Zealaner proves that you are more than capable of handling the challenges that lie ahead. Your species has demonstrated an incredible ability to adapt, to fight, and to survive. You are no longer just a fledgling species in the galaxy. You have earned your place among us. Matthews couldn't believe what he was hearing. The Galactic Council, a group made up of the most powerful species in the galaxy, was extending an invitation to Earth to join their ranks. It was a moment that he knew would forever change the course of human history. But even as he absorbed the magnitude of the news, a part of him remained grounded. This victory wasn't just about recognition. It wasn't about a seat at the table of galactic politics. It was about survival. It was about humanity proving, once and for all, that they were not just players in the galaxy, they were a force to be reckoned with. We accept, Matthews said, his voice steady. But let it be clear to the entire galaxy that humanity does not bow to anyone. We fought for our survival, and we will continue to fight to protect our people. If anyone doubts that, let them remember the Zealaner. The representative nodded, the energy around it shimmering with approval. Your words carry weight, Captain Matthews. Your species has earned its place in the stars. We look forward to working with humanity in the future. As the transmission ended, Matthews turned to his crew. The room was filled with a sense of accomplishment, but there was also an understanding that this was just the beginning. The war with the Zealaner had shown humanity what they were capable of, but the galaxy was vast, and there were more challenges. Ahead, the victory was theirs, but the true test of their strength would come in the years to come. We've done it, Matthews said, his voice filled with pride. But the fight doesn't end here. We've proven ourselves, but now, we must prove to the galaxy that this victory wasn't a fluke. We need to stand together and show the universe that humanity is ready to take its place. Among the stars, the crew nodded in agreement. They had fought for survival, but now, they had a new mission. It wasn't just about defending Earth anymore. It was about humanity's place in the galaxy. They had earned the right to be more than just survivors. They were warriors, builders, creators, and protectors. And the galaxy would soon learn that humanity was not to be underestimated. As Matthews gazed out into the vastness of space, he felt a sense of purpose that he had never felt before. The war with the Zealaner had changed everything. It had forged humanity into something greater than it had ever been. The universe had witnessed their strength, and now it was time for humanity to step into the future with confidence and pride. The Zealaner were defeated, but the galaxy was far from peaceful. There would be more threats, more battles, and more challenges ahead. But humanity was ready. They had proven themselves against the galaxy's most terrifying species, and now, they would face whatever came next with the same resolve, the same determination, and the same unbreakable spirit that had carried them through the darkest days of their existence. The galaxy had just awakened to the true power of humanity, and it would never be the same again. The final stand war had ended and the galaxy stood at a crossroads. As humanity's victory over the Zealaner became a tale spoken in every corner, of the universe. Earth had proven that it was more than just a distant world. On the outskirts of galactic conflicts, it had risen from the ashes of destruction with a fury that no one could have predicted. The Zealander, once the most feared species in the galaxy, had learned a harsh lesson that humanity was not to be underestimated. In the aftermath of the battle, Matthews and his crew returned to Earth as heroes, but they knew their victory had come at a heavy cost: the loss of lives, the destruction of cities. The sacrifices made these were scars that would never fade. Yet there was something greater in the air now, something that Earth had earned the right to call its own a place among the stars. Galactic Council had extended an olive branch, recognizing humanity as a species capable of standing shoulder to shoulder with the galaxy's oldest and most powerful civilizations. Earth was now officially part of a galactic alliance that would shape the future for generations to come. But Matthews and the rest of humanity knew this victory was not the end. It was a new beginning. For the first time, humanity had proven that it could not only survive, but thrive in the face of unimaginable challenges. Humanity's warriors had fought and bled for Earth, and now, Earth's future was no longer a solitary one. The Council's invitation was not just a recognition of strength, it was an invitation to work, to build, and to shape the future alongside other great civilizations. Humanity's time had come, and there was no turning back. In Earth, life slowly returned to a new normal. The people had endured so much, yet they stood united, bound by a shared resilience that had been forged in the fires of war. The governments of Earth, once fractured by politics, now worked together as one to rebuild not just their cities, but their standing in the galaxy. The human spirit, unbroken, was the foundation of this new era. Matthews stood on the command deck of his ship once more, watching the Earth below, no longer a helpless planet on the edge of the universe, but a beacon of strength in a vast galaxy that had underestimated them for far too long. He knew that their work was far from over. The galaxy was a place of endless challenges, and humanity had only just begun to prove what it was truly capable of. He thought of the lives lost, and the warriors who had fought beside him. He thought of the families who would never return home, but most of all, he thought of the future. The future of humanity was no longer limited to the planet below. It was boundless, stretching out to the stars, to the other civilizations that now watched Earth with newfound respect. Matthews knew that humanity had earned this future through sacrifice, determination, and a refusal to give in. No force in the galaxy could take that away. As the stars stretched out before him, Matthews couldn't help but smile. Earth was no longer just a planet in the dark corners of space. It was a force to be reckoned with, and the galaxy had learned that lesson the hard way. Humanity had not only survived, but had proven itself the galaxy's most terrifying warrior species, and this was just the beginning. End.